My wife had a second phone for work. One morning, she left it on the kitchen counter. A call came in from a contact named Love Number 3. My heart pounded. I answered, and a man's voice laughed, "Hope you're ready for round 2 tonight." That night, I placed the phone on the table and said, "I hope you are too." I'm still shaking as I write this. I don't even know where to begin. I feel like my whole life just imploded in a matter of seconds. But I guess I should start with this. I thought I had a good marriage. Nothing perfect, of course. Nobody's marriage is. But I thought my wife and I were solid. We had routines, inside jokes, a shared life built over 8 years. She still kissed me goodbye every morning. She still told me she loved me before bed. We still made plans for the future, house renovations, vacations, maybe kids someday. So when I saw the second phone, the one she never let me touch, sitting on the kitchen counter that morning, I almost walked right past it. Almost. Natalie always kept that phone buried in her purse. She said it was for work. Said her company gave it to her for client calls, which seemed reasonable enough. I never really questioned it. She worked in marketing, was always on calls, always answering emails. I figured it was just part of the job. But that morning, it was just sitting there. Unlocked. Screen lighting up every few seconds with notifications. At first, I told myself to ignore it. It wasn't my business. It was her phone, not mine. But then, it buzzed again. A call. The contact name? Love Number 3. I just stared at it. My brain scrambled for an explanation. Maybe it was a stupid inside joke? A weird client name? But before I could think too much, my hand moved on its own. I picked it up. And I answered. A man's voice came through, low and amused. "Hope you're ready for round 2 tonight." I felt like I had been punched in the gut. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. There was a pause. Then he chuckled. "Nat? You there?" My throat was dry. My whole body felt frozen. Somehow, I forced words out. "Who the hell is this?" Silence. Then, the guy laughed again. A slow, knowing kind of laugh. Like he wasn't even surprised. Ah, damn. Guess she forgot the phone this time. And then he hung up. I kept holding the phone to my ear, even after the line went dead. It was like my brain refused to process what had just happened. There had to be some kind of mistake. Some kind of misunderstanding. Maybe it was a prank? A wrong number? But as my hands shook and I stared down at that second phone, reality started crashing in. Love Number 3. Round 2. Nat? You there? I couldn't breathe. I tapped the screen, my thumb hovering over the Messages app. My gut told me I didn't want to see what was in there. But I had to. I opened the messages. And that's when my whole world shattered. There were dozens of messages. Some from Love Number 3, others from names I didn't recognize, most of them just initials or weird emojis. I clicked on the conversation with Love Number 3 first. His last message, sent the night before, read, "Can't wait to see you again. Last night was incredible." Natalie had responded with, "Same, winky face, see you tomorrow." I felt sick. I scrolled up. There were messages from weeks ago. Flirty texts, inside jokes, explicit messages I could barely stomach reading. She had been meeting up with this guy regularly. 4 months. And the worst part? It wasn't just him. Because when I went back to the main messages screen, I noticed something. She had multiple chats with different people. Different men. The way they were saved in her contacts. Love Number 3 wasn't the only one. There was a Love Number 1. Love Number 2. Love Number 4. Love Number 5. I had to put the phone down because I thought I was going to be sick. I sat there at the kitchen table for what felt like hours. Just staring at that second phone. This wasn't just one affair. This was an entire secret life. My wife was cheating. And she was cheating a lot. I don't remember much of that day after that. I don't think I ate. I don't think I even moved from that chair for hours. At some point, though, I made a decision. I wasn't going to confront her over the phone. I wasn't going to text her. I was going to let her walk right into it. So I did the only thing I could think of. I took her second phone and placed it right in the middle of the kitchen table. Then, I sat down and waited. She got home at 7:45 p.m., like usual. I heard her keys jingle as she unlocked the door. Heard her set her bag down. Nate, she called out. Hey, babe, what do you want for dinner? She walked into the kitchen. And then she saw it. The phone. Sitting right there on the table. Her entire body froze. I watched as the color drained from her face. Her eyes darted from the phone to me, then back to the phone. She knew. Her mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. I just sat there, arms crossed, waiting. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The only sound in the room was the faint hum of the fridge. Finally, I leaned forward, tapped the phone once, making the screen light up. The last missed call? Love number 3. She swallowed hard. I let the silence stretch before I finally spoke. I hope you're ready too. Her breathing hitched. Her hands clenched at her sides. Her eyes were wide, panicked. She was calculating. Trying to figure out what to say. How to spin this. I don't know what that is, she finally said, voice shaky. Where did you? I didn't answer. I just raised an eyebrow. She flinched. She knew she was caught. But I wasn't ready to hear her excuses. Not yet. A mistake? I reached forward and picked up the phone, turning the screen so she could see it. The unread messages still glaring back. Love number 3, can't wait to see you again. Last night was incredible. Natalie, same, winky face, see you tomorrow. I kept my voice steady. Go ahead. Explain this mistake to me. She swallowed hard. Her hands curled into fists. For a second, I thought she'd finally tell the truth. Just break down and admit it. But no. She did what cheaters do best. She lied. I swear, this isn't what it looks like, she rushed out. It's a joke. A stupid joke between me and some friends. We give each other fake names in our contacts. I cut her off. Oh, so your friends also tell you they can't wait for round 2? She blinked fast. Okay, I know how it sounds. But, and they send you messages about last night being incredible? She flinched. Her mouth opened, then closed again. Then she changed tactics. Her voice softened. Babe, listen, just listen to me. You're taking this all wrong. She took a slow step toward me, hands reaching like she was about to place them on my arms. Let's sit down and talk, okay? This isn't, I moved back. I didn't want her touching me. Her expression flickered, just for a second, but I saw it. Frustration. Annoyance. Like she was mad at me for catching her. That's when it clicked. Then she shook her head, eyes filling with fake tears. You don't trust me, she whispered, voice breaking. After everything we've been through? I almost laughed. Trust? She wanted to talk about trust? I exhaled slowly, shaking my head. You know what? You're right, Nat. I gestured to the phone. This is totally normal, right? Husbands see messages like this on their wives' secret second phones all the time. Her nostrils flared. And then, just for a second, just a split second, her mask slipped. The sadness on her face flickered into something else. Annoyance. Like she was tired of the act. Like she was tired of pretending. And that's when I realized something. She hadn't been debating whether to tell me the truth. She had been stalling. A sharp, unexpected ding-dong echoed through the house. Natalie's head snapped toward the front door. Her entire body tensed. And that's when I saw real panic in her eyes. She wasn't expecting anyone. I stepped past her before she could move and walked to the door. My stomach was a knot of suspicion, my mind racing through possibilities. And then, when I pulled it open, I came face to face with a man. A man about my age. Tall. Athletic. Dark hair. Sharp features. And the moment he saw me, his whole face fell. Like he had been expecting someone else. Like he had been expecting her. The silence stretched between us for a long, heavy moment. Then, in a voice full of dread, the guy muttered, "Shit." I didn't need to ask. I didn't need confirmation. I didn't need to hear anything else. This was love number 3. This was the guy from the phone. This was the guy who had laughed when he realized I had answered. I heard Natalie suck in a sharp breath behind me. I didn't turn around. I just kept my eyes on him. He took a slow step back, hands raised like he had just realized he walked into a trap. "Look, man," his voice was different now, no cocky laughter, no amusement. Just uneasy. I didn't know she was," Natalie rushed forward from behind me. "Mark," she started. And that was all I needed to hear. I turned slowly toward her. The sheer fear on her face told me everything. She had been lying straight to my face, even as the guy she was sleeping with was literally standing in front of me. I let out a slow, shaky breath. I was done. I turned back to Mark, who was still standing there, shifting uncomfortably. Then I did something that surprised even me. I stepped back from the doorway, nodded toward Natalie, and said, "You want her? Take her." Natalie gasped. "Nate, no," but I was already walking away. I wasn't going to let her beg. I wasn't going to let her lie again. I was done listening. I walked away, but I didn't leave. Not yet. Natalie was frozen in place. Mark, love number 3, stood in the doorway, unsure if he should run or step inside. The whole house was thick with tension, like the air itself knew something ugly was about to unfold. I reached the kitchen table, grabbed her second phone, and turned back around. "Tell me something, Mark," I said, voice flat. "You knew she was married, didn't you?" His jaw clenched. He hesitated. Then, yeah. I nodded, staring at him. I had expected that answer. I already knew the truth. But what he said next? That was something I didn't see coming. I just didn't know I wasn't the only one. Silence. Natalie let out a choked noise behind me. "What?" Mark exhaled sharply and ran a hand through his hair. "Yeah, Nat. I found out last week. You're not as good at hiding it as you think." He shook his head, almost laughing. "You really thought none of us would figure it out?" I turned and looked at her. She had gone pale. "What is he talking about?" I asked, but I already knew the answer. Her lips parted, but nothing came out. She looked between the two of us like a deer trapped between two moving cars. Then I saw it in her face, the calculation. She was trying to decide which one of us to lie to. So I turned back to Mark. "Who else?" His eyes flicked to Natalie for a moment before he answered. "3 that I know of," he said. "But I don't know if there's more. It wouldn't surprise me." I felt my stomach twist. 3. And that was just what he knew. Natalie let out a breathless, panicked laugh. "Oh my God, you're listening to him," she snapped, stepping closer to me, her voice sharp now, defensive. "He's lying. He's just trying to ruin us." I held up her second phone. "The only one ruining anything is you." Her mouth snapped shut. Then Mark laughed, shaking his head. "Wow. You really are something else, Nat." Natalie whipped toward him. "You need to leave." He didn't move. "Yeah? Or what?" He smirked now, but there was something bitter in it. "You gonna lie to me too? You gonna tell me I was the only one?" He tilted his head. "How many were there, huh? 5? 10? Natalie cracked. Her whole face twisted. "Oh, like you're so innocent," she snapped. "You knew I was married. You didn't care. You still came back, over and over. So don't act like you're some victim," Mark scoffed, looking at me now. "You see this? This is the real her." And he was right. I had never seen her like this. This raw, this exposed. The real her wasn't the woman I had married. The real her wasn't the one who kissed me goodbye in the morning, who laughed at my dumb jokes, who talked about growing old together. The real her was this. A woman who lied so well she had multiple men thinking they were the only one. A woman who didn't care that she was caught, only that she had lost control. A woman who, even now, was still looking for a way to twist it. And then something even worse happened. The doorbell rang again. Everyone froze. Mark turned his head toward the door. I turned toward Natalie. And she? Her face drained of all color. She knew who it was. I stepped toward the door, but she lunged for my arm. "Don't." I ripped my arm free. Her whole body was shaking now. "Please, Nate, don't open it." So I did. And there, standing on the porch, looking confused and very, very concerned, was a second man. A man I didn't recognize. And the moment he saw Mark standing behind me, his entire face fell. "What the hell?" he muttered. Natalie made a small, broken noise behind me. And that's when I knew. There were God knows how many. And they were all about to find out. I turned back to Natalie. She was trembling now. Nate, please. But I was done. Mark let out a stunned laugh. Oh my God, he said, looking between Natalie and the new guy. This is actually hilarious. The second man wasn't laughing. He looked sick. Natalie? His voice cracked. She didn't answer. Because what could she say? She wasn't going to cry. She wasn't going to deny it. She just stood there. Mark exhaled sharply. Man, I thought I had it bad, he muttered. Then he looked at me. You want to know the worst part? I didn't answer. But he told me anyway. She told me she was leaving you. He let out a bitter chuckle. I was stupid enough to believe her. The second guy spoke up, voice hollow. She told me the same thing. And just like that, everything clicked. She had been stringing all of them along. Lying to every single one of us. And if these two were standing here right now? How many others were out there, staring at their phones, waiting for a text from her? Natalie put her face in her hands. Please, she whispered. Please stop. But it was already too late. The truth was out. And there was no stopping what came next. Silence suffocated the room. Natalie stood frozen, her hands shaking, her eyes darting between me, Mark, and the second guy. The second guy, who I still didn't even know, looked like he had just been hit by a truck. His hands were clenched at his sides, his face pale. Natalie, he said again, voice hoarse. What the hell is this? Mark scoffed. What do you think, man? Welcome to the club. Natalie's breathing turned ragged. I could see the panic rising in her. Her whole body was tensed like she was about to bolt. I wasn't going to let her run. I stepped forward, my voice low, controlled. Tell them, Natalie. She swallowed. I don't, tell them how many, I demanded. My heart was pounding. I didn't even recognize my own voice. How many, Natalie? If we have love number 3 and love number 4 here, how far does the list go? She flinched. Mark turned to me, eyes narrowing. Wait. Love number 4? The second guy turned to him, then to me. What do you mean love number 4? What the F? He stopped himself, exhaling sharply. I lifted her second phone. She has you saved as love number 4 in here. I turned to Mark. And you? You're love number 3. Mark let out a bitter laugh, shaking his head. Unbelievable. The second guy looked like he was about to be sick. You mean, there's more? I'm not the only one. Natalie exploded. No. You guys don't understand. This isn't, then explain it, I snapped. She crumbled. Her shoulders collapsed inward. Her lips parted like she was about to say something, but nothing came out. She had nothing. No defense. No excuse. Just silence. And in that silence, I saw the truth written all over her face. She was never going to tell the truth. Not unless it was dragged out of her. Mark let out another humorless chuckle. Damn, Nat. I actually thought you cared about me. The second guy shook his head. You told me I was special. His voice cracked. You told me you loved me. Something snapped inside me. I turned to him. She told me that too. Mark inhaled sharply. Jesus. And just like that, the weight of it crashed down on all of us. This wasn't just infidelity. This was a goddamn operation. Natalie wasn't just cheating. She was juggling multiple relationships. Telling different men different stories. Stringing us all along, making each of us think we were the one. And for what? For the attention? The thrill? I turned back to her, my voice quiet but dangerous. Were you ever going to stop? Her eyes flickered. I don't know. That was it. That was the moment. The moment I knew I had wasted 8 years of my life on someone who didn't even feel guilty. I felt something inside me turn to ice. I wasn't sad anymore. I wasn't even angry. I was done. The second guy turned on his heel, storming out the door without another word. Mark lingered for a second longer, staring at Natalie like he was trying to figure out if any part of her had ever been real. Then he let out a sharp breath, shook his head, and walked out. Now it was just me and her. She took a step forward, her hands reaching out. Nate, please, I moved back. Her face crumbled. I never wanted to hurt you, she whispered. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. You never wanted to get caught. She didn't deny it. I reached into my pocket, pulled off my wedding ring, and set it down on the kitchen counter. The same counter where, that morning, I had found the second phone. The same counter where, just a few hours ago, I had still believed my marriage was real. Now I knew better. I stepped past her, grabbed my keys, and walked toward the door. "Where are you going?" she called after me, voice cracking. I paused at the doorway. Then, without looking back, I said, "Somewhere you can't follow." And I left. That night, I got a hotel room and turned my phone off. The next morning, I called a divorce lawyer. Natalie texted. She called. She sent long emails begging to explain, swearing she would change, promising it wasn't as bad as it looked. I never answered. Because it was exactly as bad as it looked. I found out later that Mark and the second guy weren't the only ones. There were at least 3 others. Maybe more. I didn't care. I wasn't going to waste another second trying to understand why she did what she did. She wasn't my problem anymore. The divorce went through a few months later. I moved out of state, started fresh. For a long time, I kept wondering what I had done wrong. If there was some sign I had missed. If I had been too blind, too trusting, too naive. But here's what I realized: some people cheat because they're unhappy. Some cheat because they're selfish. And some cheat just because they can. I don't know where Natalie is now. I don't care. All I know is this: the next time I fall in love, it'll be with someone who doesn't need a second phone to hide who they really are.